I'm Daniel, 32 years old, and for most of my adult life, I've been the invisible scaffolding that held my family up. Never the golden child, never the one they bragged about, just the one who made things easier financially. I never minded at first. I had a stable tech job. I didn't have kids, and honestly, I liked helping. My mom had always struggled, and my uncle, her brother, had been in and out of work for years. They shared an apartment after my grandma passed away, and it felt good to know I could keep them afloat. I started covering their rent back when I was 25. It was only supposed to be for a few months, just until they got on their feet again. That few months quietly turned into 7 years. The thing is, I never asked for anything back. Not praise, not gratitude. Just a simple thank you every now and then would have been enough. But over time, even that disappeared. They stopped updating me on anything. My uncle wouldn't even answer my texts half the time. I'd get a Venmo request or a passive-aggressive message from my mom saying, "Rent's due tomorrow," like I was some sort of automated system. I chalked it up to pride. Maybe they didn't like needing me. Maybe it was easier for them to ignore the awkwardness by pretending it wasn't a big deal. I kept my head down. I focused on work. I paid the bills. Then, last November, something happened that made everything snap. It was a Tuesday evening. I was cleaning up after dinner, about to call it a night, when I got a voice message from my uncle. No text, no context, just one of those short audio clips he rarely sent. I assumed it was some quick question about rent or groceries. I hit play on speaker while rinsing dishes. What I heard made me freeze. The message clearly wasn't meant for me. It was a recording of him talking to my mom, laughing, no less. His voice was casual, light, like they were catching up over coffee. And then he said, "Well, Dan'll cover it. He always does. The guy's basically a burden with a wallet." My mom laughed. Loud, sharp, real. Yeah. He owes us anyway. After everything. Then someone, I think it was my aunt's voice, chimed in. "Does he even ask where the money goes?" "Nope," my mom replied. "He just pays and stays quiet. Like a trained dog." The message ended there. I stood still for a long time. Dishes in the sink. Water running. That phrase, a burden with a wallet, echoing in my head like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. I didn't even feel angry at first. Just hollow. Like I'd been yanked out of my own life and dropped into someone else's cruel little joke. All those birthdays I helped fund. All the rent checks, utility bills, emergency repairs. The time I canceled my trip to Iceland so I could cover their heating bill during a rough winter. I thought I was helping. I thought I was part of a team. Family. And they'd reduce me to, what? A bank account? I didn't reply to the message. I didn't call them. I just sat with it. The days that followed felt surreal. I kept going through the motions at work, but my mind wasn't really there. Every time I tried to focus, I'd hear that laugh, that mockery, that smug assumption that I'd keep paying, no matter what. And the worst part? They weren't entirely wrong. I had kept paying. Silently. Routinely. But not anymore. I decided I needed time to think. Not just react. I started journaling, tracking every payment I'd made since I was 25. I pulled old statements, texts, Venmo records. The total made my jaw drop. Over $90,000. $90,000. I could have bought a condo with that. A new car. Started a business. Instead, it all went to people who didn't even think I deserved a seat at the table. Still, I didn't say anything. I kept paying through December like nothing had happened. Then came January. The 3rd, specifically. That's when my mom usually texted me, "Rent due by Friday. Don't be late." Only this time, she didn't text. My uncle did. He sent a casual message. "You sending the rent?" I stared at it for a while, then locked my phone and went back to my coffee. The next day, he texted again. "Need to know. The landlord's been on our backs." I said nothing. On January 6th, I got a voicemail from my mom. Her voice had that forced softness she always used when trying to be nice, but you could hear the annoyance under the surface. "Hey, Danny, just checking in. Hope everything's okay. Let me know when you're sending the rent, okay?" I still said nothing. On the 8th, things started to shift. First came the guilt trip texts. "Daniel, we're worried. This isn't like you. If something's wrong, you can tell us." Then the manipulative ones. "You know the landlord doesn't wait. We could be out on the street. Is that what you want?" And finally, the anger. By the 10th, I had a full voicemail inbox. My uncle shouting into the phone. "What is wrong with you, Dan? You think this is funny? Playing games when people rely on you." Mom left 3 messages in a row. "After everything we've done for you. After raising you, feeding you, this is how you repay us. That one really got to me. Raised me? She left me with grandma from age 9 to 15 while she got her life together. I lived on frozen pizza and shared a room with 3 cousins while she partied in Miami with her new boyfriend. But sure, she raised me. Still, I didn't respond. Not yet. Because I wasn't done preparing. While the messages poured in, I was busy, quietly contacting their landlord, quietly closing the shared utility accounts I had opened in my name, quietly securing all the receipts and bank statements that proved every payment came from me and not us, like they always claimed, quietly getting ready to take back my silence and turn it into something far louder. And then came January 13th. Rent was officially late. Their landlord called me. He was confused. He said my name was on the email contact list. He wanted to know if I'd be covering it late again or if he needed to initiate eviction procedures. I asked him to send everything in writing. He did. And that was the day I finally drafted my reply. To my mom, to my uncle, and to the rest of the family that had grown used to my invisible support. But before I hit send, I added one more thing, a voice message. And when they played it, they'd hear something they never expected. Because I didn't just sit quietly this time. I told them exactly what they'd said, word for word. I reminded them of the Iceland trip I skipped, the times I bailed them out, the years I didn't ask for thanks. And then I asked one simple question. Do you laugh about everyone who saves your neck? Or was it just me? I ended it with, rinse still. Good luck. And then I turned off my phone. That was 3 hours ago. Now I'm sitting by the window, watching the sky turn gold over the skyline, sipping the best cup of coffee I've ever had. And my phone has started vibrating again. The first message came from my uncle. A voice note. Again. I almost didn't play it. I figured I'd heard enough of his voice to last me a lifetime, but something told me to listen. His tone was different this time. No smug laughter. No casual dismissal. Just panic. Dan, look, I don't know what that message was. I think you misunderstood. We were just joking, you know? Families joke. That's what we do. Joking. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair, letting the words sink in. The way they'd cackle didn't sound like joking. It sounded like years of built-up resentment, of seeing me not as a son or nephew, but as a resource. More messages followed. My mom left 3 in a row. Her voice wavered in each one, teetering between guilt and indignation. Daniel, please. You know I didn't mean what I said. That was taken out of context. Another, you're blowing this out of proportion. You've always been so sensitive. Don't let one silly comment ruin everything. And then, we're your family. You owe us at least a conversation before pulling something like this. Ah, there it was again. That word. Oh. They always circled back to that. I'd spent my whole life being told, in small, veiled ways, that I owed them. That it was my duty to give, to support, to never question. That my existence was the result of their sacrifices, and I'd better spend the rest of my life repaying that invisible debt. Even when I graduated college and landed my first job, my mom's first reaction wasn't congratulations. It was, now maybe you can finally start giving back. I thought she was joking then. She wasn't. Around noon, I started getting messages from extended family. My cousin Sarah texted, "Hey, Mom says you're refusing to pay rent and might let them get evicted? Is everything okay?" Another cousin I barely spoke to sent, "You're better than this, Dan. Don't let pride make you cruel." Cruel. Funny how quickly the narrative changed once the money stopped. By 3 p.m., I got a call from the landlord again. He said they'd missed the grace period, and if payment wasn't made by the 15th, he'd have no choice but to start the eviction process. I told him politely that I was no longer involved with their payments and he'd need to speak to the tenants directly. He paused, then asked if I was okay. I don't know what came over me, but I laughed. It was the first time I'd laughed in days. Actually, I told him, I think I'm better than I've been in years. He thanked me for my help over the past few years. Apparently, he knew I'd been covering everything and had always assumed I was doing it by choice. I told him I had been, until I found out I'd become their punchline. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. No calls from work, no obligations, no financial fires to put out for anyone but myself. It was quiet, and the quiet felt like peace. But it didn't last. The next morning, I opened my door to find a handwritten letter on the doormat. From my mother. The handwriting was rushed, messy. Inside was a single-page note, scribbled in ballpoint pen. It read, "Daniel, I can't believe you would do this. You're tearing the family apart. Your uncle is talking about moving out, and I have nowhere to go. I'm sick of being punished for one stupid joke. We never asked you to pay for everything. You just did. If you're going to turn your back on us over something so trivial, then maybe you were never really family to begin with. Mom. I stared at the paper for a long time. My heart didn't race. My jaw didn't clench. I felt nothing. Not even anger anymore. Just clarity. That letter said everything I needed to hear. That even now, with the floor beneath them starting to crack, they were incapable of admitting they'd done anything wrong. No apology. No reflection. Just deflection. Guilt. Manipulation. But I was done being manipulated. That evening, I packed up a small suitcase. I'd already requested 2 weeks off work, my first real vacation in years. I booked a quiet cabin upstate, surrounded by forest. No Wi-Fi. No cell service. Just peace. Before I left, I did one last thing. I sent a group message to every family member who'd texted me in the past few days. It read, "I'm stepping away for a while. I've spent years supporting this family, financially and emotionally, often at the cost of my own mental health. That chapter is over. I wish you all well. If anyone reaches out to guilt, shame, or lecture me, you'll be blocked. Take care." Then I turned off my phone. I drove for 3 hours, breathing in the freedom with every mile. It wasn't until I reached the cabin, unpacked my bags, and settled by the fireplace that I felt it. Relief. For once, I wasn't waiting for the next request, the next demand, the next crisis I'd be expected to solve. I was just living. And for the first time in my adult life, I realized something that hit me like a revelation. I don't owe anyone anything. Not my silence. Not my money. Not my peace. And when I return from this trip, I'll be doing something that will make that message very clear. 2 weeks passed like a dream. Every morning, I woke up to birdsong instead of the jarring ping of a Venmo request. I made coffee with fresh grounds, not instant. I read paperbacks by the fire, hiked through trails that smelled like pine and wet earth, and fell asleep each night with the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty, it felt earned. I didn't miss my phone. I didn't miss the guilt, the passive-aggressive texts, or the constant sense that I was a walking ATM with a pulse. I missed nothing. But I wasn't naive. I knew peace like this couldn't last forever. When I drove back into town, I stopped at a rest area and turned on my phone. It had a moment of hesitation, like even it wasn't sure it wanted to be dragged back into the chaos. And then, like floodgates bursting open, the notifications poured in. 37 texts. 4 missed calls. 6 voicemails. 1 message from a number I didn't recognize that simply said, "It's worse than you think." I didn't check them. Not yet. Instead, I drove straight home, unpacked my bag, and sat down at my kitchen table with a notebook and pen. I had a plan to execute. It started with the lease. See, while I wasn't on the lease for their apartment, I had signed a personal guarantee for the utilities and cable. Years ago, they had trouble getting approved on their own. Just until we build better credit, they said. Like always. So the first thing I did was contact each provider. Gas, electricity, internet. I'd already notified them before my trip, but now I submitted the final paperwork to formally terminate my guarantee and close the accounts in my name. Effective immediately. Next was the financial audit. Remember those records I compiled? The years of payments, receipts, and account transfers? I emailed them to myself from every angle, saved in multiple cloud drives and flash drives. Then, I packaged them all into a neat PDF and titled it, Daniel K. Voluntary Financial Contributions to Relatives, 2015 to 2023. I sent it to my accountant, who was baffled I hadn't said anything about this sooner. His exact words were, "You could have bought a small lake house with this." "Yeah," I said, "but I bought silence instead." He laughed, but not out of amusement. Out of disbelief. I told him I needed documentation ready in case my family tried to claim I'd abandoned them financially or made promises I didn't fulfill. He nodded, said he'd draft something airtight. Then came the last part. The part one hadn't planned on until I read the final voicemail. It was from my uncle. And this time, he didn't yell. He didn't guilt trip. He begged. His voice was hoarse, shaky. "Dan, listen. We got the notice. The landlord's serious. We've got 2 weeks to vacate. Your mom's freaking out. I'm scared, man. I know we messed up. I know we said things we shouldn't have. But please, don't do this. Don't make us start over. We've got nothing without you." That last sentence stayed with me. We've got nothing without you. Not, we miss you. Not, we were wrong. Just that, we've got nothing without you. which meant everything they ever had was mine. So I wrote a letter, not a petty email, a real, printed letter, signed by hand, delivered by registered mail. I sent one to my uncle and one to my mother. It read, "You referred to me as a burden with a wallet, but I carried the burden and you emptied the wallet." For years, I believed that helping family was the right thing to do, that loyalty meant silence, that love meant self-sacrifice. But love without respect isn't love, it's control. I am no longer available to be your safety net. Your landlord has been informed that I am not responsible for your rent. All utility accounts under my name have been closed. You are adults. You will find a way, or you won't. Either way, I'm no longer involved. I wish you clarity. I wish you accountability. But most of all, I wish you the humility to one day understand what you lost. Daniel. I dropped the letters off at the post office, then blocked their numbers, not out of spite, but self-preservation. Over the next week, I began to feel lighter. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about taking back the narrative. For the first time, I was the one drawing the boundary, not waiting for them to cross it. Then, 3 days before the reported eviction date, I got a call from a private number. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something told me to answer. It was my cousin, Sarah, the only one in the family who'd ever treated me with something resembling kindness. "Dan," she said, voice hushed, "you need to know something. They've been telling everyone that you promised to keep paying rent and then just ghosted them. They've got Aunt Rachel and Grandpa thinking you're having some kind of breakdown." I sighed. "And they believed it?" "I didn't," she said, "which is why I'm calling." I thanked her, told her not to get involved, and hung up. But something in her voice stuck with me. There was more to this. Something deeper than just a smear campaign. So I logged into an old shared family Google Drive, the one we all used for photos and vacation plans, and discovered something that made my stomach turn. My uncle had uploaded a family expenses spreadsheet. In it, he listed himself as the one who'd been covering rent for the past few years. Next to my name, a column labeled "Occasional Help with Bills." He was showing this to other family members, using my generosity to boost his reputation. And my mother? She'd added a comment in one of the tabs, saying, "Let's not make Dan feel guilty. He's fragile." Fragile. The same man who held your roof over your head for nearly a decade. Something inside me broke again, but this time, not in the way they'd expect. Because the next move I made? It wasn't just about walking away. It was about making sure everyone else finally saw who they really were. I knew exposing them would make waves in the family. I also knew that if I didn't tell my story, they'd keep rewriting it for me, casting themselves as victims and me as some cold-hearted traitor who cut them off during hard times. So I decided to take control of the narrative. Not out of revenge, though. Sure, I'd be lying if I said that didn't factor in. But for the first time in my life, I wanted the truth out there. No more silence. No more shame. I wrote a letter. Not just a message. A letter. 6 pages long, printed and mailed to every relative on both sides of the family, uncles, aunts, cousins, even my grandparents. Some I hadn't seen in years. Some probably wouldn't care. But they deserved to know the full picture before they kept passing judgment. In it, I started from the beginning, how I'd quietly started paying rent for my mom and uncle when I was 25, thinking it would be temporary. I listed the utilities, the groceries, the emergencies. I included the years I'd helped with Christmas gifts, funeral costs, car repairs, and back-to-school supplies for cousins that weren't even mine. I mentioned the vacations I skipped, the nights I stayed in to make sure I could meet their rent on time, and the promotions I turned down because I couldn't risk relocating while they still depended on me. Then, I included the voice message. Verbatim. Typed out line by line. "Well, Dan'll cover it. He always does. The guy's basically a burden with a wallet. Yeah. He owes us anyway. After everything. Does he even ask where the money goes? Nope. He just pays and stays quiet. Like a trained dog. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't embellish. I just told the truth and let it speak for itself. Then I attached the spreadsheet I'd discovered, the one where my uncle claimed he had been paying the rent all these years, and I was just occasionally helping. I underlined the fake entries, highlighted the lies. And finally, I closed with this. I don't need pity. I don't want applause. I just want space. I want the peace I earned. If you've benefited from my silence, that time is over. If you judge me without asking questions, that's your burden to carry. I'm done carrying things that don't belong to me. They called me a burden with a wallet. But here's the truth. I was the bridge they walked across. And I'm not letting them walk on me anymore. I mailed every letter certified. I wanted them signed for. I wanted each recipient to feel the weight of it, literally and figuratively. The fallout was volcanic. It started with silence. A weird, humming silence. No texts. No calls. Not even from Sarah. Just nothing, like the entire family had been punched in the gut and was too stunned to speak. Then, one by one, the messages trickled in. From my Aunt Linda, I had no idea, Daniel. I'm, I'm so sorry. I can't believe they said those things. I always thought your uncle was the one supporting your mom. That's what they told us. From my cousin Ryan, you paid for our school supplies? Dude, I didn't even know you were involved. They told us you were just distant and cold. From Grandpa, you did right by yourself. Don't let anyone tell you different. Some were less gracious. My Uncle Mark said, this could have stayed private, Dan. You embarrassed your mother. That's not how family handles things. I didn't respond. He wasn't worth the energy. As for my mother, she didn't call. She didn't text. But 2 days after the letters landed, I got an email. Short. Cold. You've made your point. Hope it was worth burning everything down. Mom. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to reply. Because no, I didn't burn anything down. They did. All I did was stop being the one rebuilding the house every time they lit a match. Meanwhile, word got back to me that the eviction had gone through. The landlord finally pulled the plug. They were forced out within a week. My mom ended up crashing on a friend's couch. My uncle, last I heard, was staying in a motel outside town and complaining loudly about being betrayed. They tried contacting Sarah for help, but she'd finally drawn her own boundary too. Funny how people start standing up when they realize they were lied to too. One evening, about 2 weeks after everything unfolded, I went out to dinner alone. I sat by the window at my favorite Korean barbecue place, the one I used to skip because I felt guilty spending money on myself. I ordered whatever I wanted, without glancing at the right side of the menu. Halfway through the meal, I got a message from Sarah. It was a photo. My mom, sitting in a crowded waiting room, holding a clipboard. Captioned, she's trying to apply for housing assistance. No idea what she's going to do next. I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed my phone, finished my meal, and paid the bill with a quiet sense of peace. Because for once, it wasn't my problem to solve. And that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized something profound. I had been raised to believe love meant sacrifice. But the truth is, love without boundaries becomes servitude. And I hadn't been loved. I'd been used. And now, finally, I was free. Since then, I've started therapy. I've gone on that Iceland trip, solo, and it was everything I hoped it would be. I've reconnected with friends I lost touch with while constantly bailing out my family. I even adopted a dog, a wiry little mutt with big ears who follows me everywhere. His name's Bridge. A small reminder of what I used to be, and what I'll never let myself become again. My mom still hasn't apologized. My uncle never will. But their absence doesn't ache like I thought it would. Because when you stop being a wallet, when you reclaim your voice, when you walk away from the people who taught you your value is measured in dollar signs, what you're left with is something money can't buy: self-respect and peace. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.